Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Mesa City Council study session for the afternoon of June the 15th. I can see by the Zoom screen that all of our council is present, as is city staff in the city manager's conference room. The first item on our agenda for this meeting is to review the agenda items for tonight's council meeting. So council, please refer to that agenda. We do have a couple of items that I think have come off of the consent agenda. Those would be, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Mickelson, but I believe agenda items 4E, F, G, and H, as well as agenda items 7A and items 9A, B, C, and D. A, B, C, and D, 9 was already off the consent agenda because it's a public hearing on a zoning case, but the items that moved off of the consent agenda so far are 4E, F, G, and H, and item 7A. Council, are there any other items currently on the consent agenda you'd like to remove or request any additional information regarding?
Mayor, 7A, I don't have a speaker card for 7A.
Oh, okay. I must have looked at an old message then. All right, so 7A, I thought it was odd that it was being taken off. So 7A remains on the consent agenda.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Council, any other questions regarding tonight's agenda?
I got a question.
Yes, Jeremy.
I think I'd asked this question last year, but on item 5D for our PSPRS liability, what's the difference in interest cost that we're paying since we changed that amortization from 20 to 25 years? What's that annual difference?
You mean from 25 to 20 years?
Correct. I believe it was 20 years prior to our change last year or the year before that, and now it's 25.
Oh.
Unless
right.
I'm mistaken. I'm just.
Yes, I understand your question, but I believe we're also paying it off in less than 25 years. So I'm sorry, that's where I was confused. Excuse me.
So, okay, the easiest way to answer the question, I think, Brian, is what is the minimum required payment? What's that versus what we're paying now?
Yeah. Mayor, Councilmember Whitaker, legally, or officially, we switched to from the 3 years ago, we switched from the 30-year amortization to the 25-year amortization, which has now, 3 years later, has become the 22-year amortization versus it would be 27 years, the official, the longest that we have to pay that off. So the difference in cost is $5 million. So we're paying to pay the unfunded liability off in 22 years rather than 27. We're contributing an extra $5 million this year, or next year, I should say. Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. So Mike just mentioned it. It would have been we switched from 20 years to 30 years officially and decided to pay it off in 25. So if we hadn't switched it, we currently be at 17-year amortization.
But we're paying $5 million more than the minimum requirement each year out of the budget. Now, I don't know that we've calculated what the over the 22 years or what difference in interest, but the impact to the city, we're paying $5 million more than the minimum requirement.
Yeah, and if I could just add, Mayor, Councilmember Whitaker, this isn't, we think of it as a debt sometimes, but we're not paying interest, right? We're just not earning interest on additional cash in the plan. So just a point of clarification there.
Yeah, I get that. For lack of a better word, I used interest. I don't know how else to describe it. And I guess I was clear my question. 3 years ago, we were paying it off in 20 years, and then we decided we were going to switch to paying it off in 25 years. So I guess my question is, how much was our payment 3 years ago, and how much of our payment today, and what of that is how much of that is interest? How much extra are we paying in interest because we switched from 20 to 25 years?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Kerr, I don't know the additional costs over that time. I don't have that. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll request 5D taken off consent. I'm not for paying more interest on the amortization, changing that from 20 to 25 years, as we did 3 years ago. I believe it should be less.
We're not changing any business. Council, make sure the rest of council understands, we are not making any changes. This is the same program that we've been on, the same schedule we've been on. We're not changing anything. So I would be clear, this is not a change. We're not proposing a change in this policy. It's consistent with what we've discussed with council previously. And the reason we're paying this amount is because it's what we can bear. And to Councilman Whitaker's point, we're trying not to dip our reserves any further. If we were to pay more, his concern about the reserves dropping lower, the reserves would drop significantly low. That's where the funding would come from, would be our reserves. So in order to balance making a payment to our unfunded liability, that's the amount that's in the budget. It's what's scheduled. If we do more, it drops our reserves further than where they are today.
Yeah, just to clarify from my perspective, it's the allocation of money that we're spending on other projects from the general fund that I disagree with. I think the money would be better spent towards paying down our PSBRS liabilities.
Fair enough.
Okay, 5D is off the consent agenda. Council, any other questions about tonight's regular council meeting agenda? Okay, seeing none, the next item on our agenda for this meeting is item 2. That's to take action on board appointments. Is there a motion to approve those appointments? Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Seconded by Mr. Luna. We'll do a roll call vote. Vice Mayor Freeman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Whitaker.
Aye.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Real quickly, the Councilmember Freeman pointed out a little bit of a typo we had in those appointments. You want to take credit for it, Mark? Do you want to talk? So
Yeah, I will, Chris. I noticed the last 2 appointments, their term expires 3023, and I don't think they can live 1,000 years. If they do, I'm all in.
So, and Councilman Freeman, you actually that was the tip of the iceberg. I think it was several others.
There were numerous.
So we'll just make sure that we clarify that that's only intended till 2023.
All right, are we sure we want to only do it till 2023? I mean, I like to wish them well for the next 1,000 years. And all right. Well, thank you. So thank you for catching that typo, Mr. Freeman. So the motion, as I understand it, is for until 2023 for these appointments. Is that okay with Mr. Thompson and Mr. Luna? Thank you. All right, so let's go back to voting. Vice Mayor Freeman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Whitaker.
Muted.
I'm sorry.
Aye. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Councilmember Heredia.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Duff.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Luna.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Thompson.
Aye.
Thank you. And I vote aye as well, so that motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda for this meeting is the current event summary and reports on meetings and conferences attended. Council, anything you'd like to share with us? Mr. Luna.
Thank you, Mayor. This last Thursday, I hosted the second installment of your program, Communities of Color Forum, with representatives from the Asian, African American, Native American, Hispanic, and Muslim communities, alongside Chief Cost and Andrea Alicote. It was broadcast on Channel 11 as well as YouTube and Facebook. Friday morning, I attended the Mesa PD Academy Class 45 virtually via YouTube. Although I couldn't be there to celebrate with them, I want to congratulate each and every one of our new members to our police force. So congratulations to them. Also, Friday afternoon, Councilmember Duff and I met with some constituents. I'll go ahead and let her speak on that. Really talking about the CARES funding here in the city of Mesa. And let's see, and then I'll be recording another Feeding Mesa Canned Food Drive, a video for Mesa Espanol advertising next week. So I know Councilmember Thompson is going to be having a drive in his district, so I'll be doing a small video in Spanish as well as the technical assistance that we're providing via our CARES program to our businesses in our community. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you for doing all that, Mr. Luna. Jan, I think Mr. Luna invited you to share. Would you like to accept that invitation?
Sure. I appreciate Councilmember Luna joining me in order to have a dialogue with our community about our CARES funding and what it takes care of and what it's going for and how it affects our city overall. And so we'll continue with everything going on. It's so fast paced to try to reach out to our community so we can have these Zoom meetings. Being in person is difficult, and to increase our communication as we go every step forward and going through our COVID, going through, our challenges with the request for police reform and what we can do there to make our community stronger socially and through safety. So I appreciate those dialogues, and we'll be having more.
Great. Thank you for having those constituent meetings and talking about the essential services that are being funded through the CARES Act, in addition to all of the small business and food assistance that's taking place. Councilmember Heredia, I saw your hand up.
Yeah. So just want to say, the long-awaited opening of H Mart happened last week in West Mesa, along Dobson and Maine. They did a soft opening last week, and it's with the precautions. You wear a mask and gloves, but there was a lot of people waiting for this store, and it doesn't disappoint. Really good options out there, and I think a great asset to the area. And I think it will be something that will definitely add to our Asian district in the immediate and long term. So.
I appreciated your post about it. I immediately went over to, and I'm proud to say I've got a fresh jar of kimchi in my refrigerator right now. I agree. H Mart did not disappoint. That's and the parking lot was packed. It's like Disneyland over there. If you like Asian food, we hit the jackpot with H Mart. Thank you for bringing that up, Frankie. Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Chief Cost and Commander Peters out of Superstition. Last Thursday night, we had an open dialogue forum with residents from East Mark. Very well attended. We did it by Zoom. Very well attended. Residents asked some really tough questions, and we were able to provide some answers to those questions. And the feedback that I got was amazing. That the community is in support of our police department. They better understand that what they're seeing in the media is not what we're experiencing in Mesa. And so kudos to Chief Cost and Commander Peters for their openness and their transparency and willingness to discuss the hot topics with our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Okay, Council, anything else you'd like to share under this agenda item? All right, seeing none, that concludes the items that are on our agenda for this meeting. Except Mr. Brady, will you update us on what our future schedule of meetings looks like?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Council, just a reminder, and we spoke about this last week, we will not be meeting this Thursday. I know there's some conflict with some council members with some National League of Cities meetings. So we will not meet on the 18th, but we'll meet on our next study session will be June 25th. Thank you. And I will just remind you that after tonight, our next two council meetings will be July 1st and July 8th.
Okay.
Thank you.
And for those who are wondering, we're crowding those meetings to the first 2 weeks of July so that we can have a staff break for the second 2 weeks of July, as is the annual tradition, right?
Hey, John, I got one question, if I may.
Yes.
I thought I saw on the agenda that we were getting a presentation on item, I think 6B, but I don't see it on the agenda anymore. Was that updated, or are we getting that during our next council meeting? Was it like a G-Plit or something?
I'm
Or maybe
sorry.
I clicked on the wrong. Maybe I clicked on the wrong meeting. I don't know.
So, Councilman Whitaker, Mayor Councilman Whitaker, we will be presenting the development agreement, which this notice is part of, the details about the retail tax incentive agreement, and specifically this is for a car dealership. And so we'll be presenting the details of that entire development agreement on the 25th. And then that'll be considered on your July 8th council meeting. So we will be prepared to make that presentation on June 25th.
Okay, just to clarify, Chris, item 6, is that, are we just like doing, is that just like an introduction then tonight, or can somebody provide me clarification on what
That's
we're doing?
correct, Mayor Councilman Whitaker. The items, the zoning items that you see on on item 6 are introducing the zoning associated with this development. And then that's what you see on those 6A. And that's the zoning. The 6B is just a notice that has to go out saying the city is contemplating providing a retail incentive. And then we'll have those details for you on the June 25th study session. So we'll have that before your July 8th meeting.
All right, thank you.
All right. Yes, Councilmember Duff. Jen, I think you might.
Yeah, sorry, excuse me. I'm equally confused. I saw on our little panel, our gallery of, is there a presentation? This is Destination at Gateway is the title of the presentation on.
Oh, there is a zoning present. If you would like to hear a presentation on the zoning, we have that if you'd like to hear that. We just prepared it. We weren't sure if you actually wanted to hear it presented or just have the information, but Nan is here. If you want a presentation on the item 6A, he's certainly available here to do that.
Yes, I'd like a presentation. I have some questions on it, and I think a presentation.
Oh, okay. Sure.
That.
All right. So Glenn, if you can pull up that presentation, and Nana will go through it for the council. This is item 6A. Speak loudly.
All right. Mayor Council, so the request for this item basically entails two requests. One is a general plan amendment to change the character designation from neighborhood, which is basically residential uses, to community activity center to allow commercial uses. And then the zoning, the accompanying zoning case is also basically to change it from residential to general commercial to allow the uses that are being planned or anticipated to be developed. So what you are looking at right now is a request slide. You can see it's right now yellow, which basically is all residential in that development. Next slide, please. Again, that's residential, the purple is commercial. So the highlighted boundary, that is the boundary of the 89 acres being requested to rezone before you. Next slide. So the red is what is being proposed to be rezoned to. What you're looking at right now is the general plan amendment that is going from neighborhood to mixed-use activity center, which is basically for large commercial uses that draw people from large areas within the surrounding community. Next, please. So what you're looking at is right now the requested zone, and that will be general commercial, which will allow what they are intending to use the property for. Next, please. So as part of the request also, they are asking for plan area development because we are restricting certain uses, and the only way to do that is to have a plan area development overlay to restrict those uses. And as part of that, as we were discussing earlier on, there's going to be a development agreement that in addition to all the incentives that are going to be discussed, there's also few land use restriction and percentage of commercial and residential that will be required. So right now, the request is to rezone it to general commercial. And in our zoning ordinance, we do require 40% minimum commercial within the general commercial zoning district and maximum of 60% residential within the GC district. As part of the development agreement, they are flipping it the other way around, where they are basically are going to be required to do a minimum of 60% of the site for commercial and then 40% of the site for residential. And so that's one of the reasons why we're also doing the development agreement for the land use restrictions. Next slide, please. So what you see here is also a council use permit. In addition to the 40% commercial that is required in the GC and the 60%, we also do require 65% of the ground floor of all developments in the general commercial to have commercial uses unless you get a council use permit. So the intent of requiring those 65% ground floor is typically for vertically integrated mixed use, because with a development agreement, they're actually providing more commercial than what is generally required. And in addition, this is also more of your horizontal mixed use instead of vertical mixed use. So what they are requesting the council use permit is to allow, they are actually planning to build a multifamily. And so to allow the ground floor of multifamily to be for residential and waive the requirement of 65% of the ground floor for commercial. So that's what the council use permit is specifically for. Next, please. So that concludes basically their request meets our general plan, goals and purposes and requirements. And it also meets the zoning ordinance. So we are recommending approval with a development agreement that will be associated with the project.
Thank you. Council questions. Go ahead, Councilmember Duff.
I'm still a little confused why we would rezone general commercial and then have a council use permit for 100% residential. I understand the single level, but wouldn't we just take different parcels or PADs and have that be residential and then a separate area for commercial instead of the entire area being either residential or commercial? Or I'm probably not understanding this correctly, but I'm confused.
If I may.
Yes, Mr. Thompson.
So Jim, one of the things that we're doing is if you look at the overall plan, we've eliminated the entire area from being housing and we've created more jobs. But the trade-off for that was to allow some residential, which was the multifamily, but we asked them to go vertical. So we're, instead of going out, we're going up. And so to go up, we're also allowing them to do the bottom floor as residential. But if you look at the overall, we're really carving out an area for jobs and revenue for our city by taking away some of the housing down in that area.
So yeah, Mayor, Council, this is a reversal that I think Councilor Thompson and I are celebrating to go away from residential to commercial at a significant, what I would call a significant, one of the most significant intersections that Mesa will have in the future, because this is the intersection of Signal Butte Road, which is still under construction or still under design, sorry, as well as Highway or State Route 24, which is still under design, eminent to be developed. So we have a developer who's gone out and has taken out the residential from a major intersection where we would encourage, obviously, more commercial uses, and specifically in this case, as you saw from the notice, significant retail generator. And so that's why we've kind of worked this kind of trade-off with both zoning and with incentives, is we're trying to, it's important for us to lock down these significant intersections where we would expect to have high value retail commercial activity. And that's what this is trying to accomplish.
Mr. Brady, are we at liberty to discuss what the proposed use is for this?
Sure. It's car dealerships. So we're working with the Burge family and the Horn family. Not on this. This is Burge, but there are other car dealerships in the area that they want to get out there now, even before the roads are built, because it's I don't know what the term is. Maybe Council Thompson, you can help me with it. So once they establish a site, that keeps other developments from coming in within a certain radius. And so it's important for us to get this done quickly, because there are competing locations in other jurisdictions that if they are built out or they go forward first, then it eliminates the site from being able to be an automotive car dealership. So that's one of the reasons we're here today.
Right. So it's kind of like a certificated area. They only allow so many dealerships within a certain mileage. I think it's like a 4-mile radius or something of that nature. So they're trying to be one of the first ones there to get that prime location.
Okay, and again, this is set for a public hearing 2 weeks from today, right? Where I expect we'll get into the details and more so than today.
But July 8th, there's the date. Yeah.
Okay, I'll call for a meeting so I can go into depth so I make sure I understand it, since we have the time. But thank you, Nana.
So Councilor Duff, if you'd like, we'll just follow up with you. This is introduction only, but we'll have Nana and you guys can get together and get in more details after this.
Great, thank you.
One question, John.
Yes, Jeremy.
Are we using G-plits or any tax incentives for this, or is this just a straight rezoning project?
Well, 6A is just the introduction of the zoning. 6B is giving notice that the city is considering providing a retail incentive for the car dealerships to reimburse. Well, it doesn't go into detail, but ultimately we're going to come back to you with a plan to help since there are no streets out of this location right now, with an idea that we would reimburse the developer with a portion of the sales tax over a period of time to reimburse them for the street improvements and other, I think, utilities too, that they would have to put in order to activate the site. And that's what we'll present to you on the 25th.
Okay.
Thank you, Council. Other questions regarding this presentation? Mr. Freeman.
Chris and maybe Kevin, what's our timestamp on this? I mean, if the dealership's wanting to move forward, are they planning on building out here in the near future?
Mark, they're actually looking to purchase the land the 1st of August, first week or second week of August. And that way they can get their certificates in place and be ready to move forward.
Great. I just see this as a win for that portion of our city. You know, car dealerships are an important economic component. So great, Kevin. I'm glad this is happening for your district, and carry on.
Thank you.
Okay, Council, any other questions regarding this presentation? All right, hearing none, is there any other, I think we've completed our agenda for this meeting. Have I missed anything? Anything else on questions regarding our next agenda or schedule of future meetings or conferences attended? Not seeing any. Okay, so Council, if you would please unmute your microphones. We'll do a voice vote to adjourn this meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Luna. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? All right, thank you. This meeting is adjourned, and we will wait for the video to roll before we begin our formal council meeting.